Hello, thank you so much for coming. We'll let people come into the room and get started just in a minute or so. I welcome you. Okay, thank you for coming and taking time out of your day to be here with us for this conversation, Widening the Path, Three Women of Color in Publishing Share Wisdom. Uh, People are joining us from all over, different time zones, different geographic locations, people inside publishing, people outside publishing, and we're glad you're here. And my name is Tim McKee. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the publisher at North Atlantic Books. And I wanted to first start with some gratitudes. First, I wanted to thank Gayatri, Rakia, and Hisae for being here and being willing to share your experiences and insights with us. It means a lot. I'm also grateful to Gabby Cazares Lopez and Joe Finlaw, two of my colleagues who've helped me bottom line the event. Um, and I'm really thankful to you all who are here, both for your presence. We're here for you, but also for your really excellent and provocative questions. I think a Q&A, which this is only as powerful as the questions, and your questions were profound. So thank you. So we'll be spending the next hour and a half answering your questions. Hopefully, if you submitted one during ticketing, you'll hear your question. We may have edited it slightly for clarity, but they were all good questions, and so we're going to try to fit them in. We'll do that after just a short intro here for like 45 minutes, and then we'll take a little 5-minute break. But come back because the whole conversation is pertinent, and also some of the questions at the end, kind of purposely, I think, are some of the more challenging ones. So, stay as long as you can, but I hope you'll stay with us for all of it. Um, I want to share a little bit about the genesis of this event. I think the seeds of it were planted about 2 years ago when Gayatri, Hisae, and I were all in New York at Penguin Random House's Client Summit, which they hold every year. And as part of that, they would have a heads of house dinner. And at that, 40 or so client publishers, heads of houses were there around the table. And as I was looking around, I noticed, wow, there's two women of color and maybe 6 people of color total out of the 40. And I'm not trying to pick on that constellation. In fact, that percentage matches what we know about the publishing industry, that only 23% of executives in book publishing are people of color. But Hisae and I and Gayatri got to talking about that afterwards. And, we were saying, if publishing is to survive, it must transform who comprises it and who's leading it. And for that to happen, we need a much more diverse group of people to not only enter publishing, but to stay in publishing. So Gayatri, Hisae, and I, we wondered aloud, maybe we could create a space or a panel where we answer questions from people in publishing about our journeys, lessons learned, heartbreaks, and how it is ultimately that we stayed in publishing. We wanted to give the mic to women of color who have been in publishing for the long haul and who could speak into the questions that keep folks up at night. And Gayatri had the great idea of including Rakia, who's an awesome person. And also it feels important to include because Gayatri and Hisae work for independent nonprofit publishing houses. And it felt really important to also include the perspectives and experiences of somebody who has also spent a good amount of time at the Big Four. So in as much as some of the structural challenges that people face and that you probably face may differ depending on the ecosystem one works within. During our practice session last week, Rakia noted Yeah, these are the questions I was asking and needed answers on when I was young and publishing. So in some ways, the panelists will be speaking to their younger selves, the ones who are struggling to find their way. Rakia, Gayatri, and Hisae persisted and stayed in publishing. How? So we're going to try to endeavor to answer your questions in that vein. We can't solve your challenges, but perhaps there's something in what the panelists share that will help. So I want to introduce my esteemed panelists and publishing colleagues, and then we'll begin. Hisae Matsuda is the publisher of Parallax Press, the nonprofit publisher founded by Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh and located in Berkeley. Born in Japan and raised in London, Hisae first encountered mindfulness practice at a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh in England in 1993. She's honored to serve as publisher of the teachings of the Plum Village Engaged Buddhism tradition, which she finds a beautiful path for personal and community healing and transformation. Before joining Parallax in 2016, she worked at North Atlantic Books and Obuncha, an educational publisher in Tokyo. Hisae is inspired by great writing that shows the connections between spirituality, sustainability, social change, and healing. She's based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And on a personal note, Hisae have not known each other for, I did the math, 12 years. We worked together at North Atlantic Books for a big chunk of that. I consider a friend, a publishing ally, and an editor extraordinaire. Hisae is the kind of editor that when an author does another book, they demand that they work with her again, even if she doesn't work at the press anymore. So much integrity, so much authenticity, and someone full of love. Rakia Clark is an executive editor at Mariner Books, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers. Books on Rakia's list have won the Kirkus Prize, been longlisted for the Andrew Carnegie Medal of Excellence, been finalists for NAACP awards, and routinely recognized in Best of the Year roundups. In all cases, she looks for writers who have something to say. Big emotions and topical subjects are plus. Prior to Mariner, Rakia worked remotely from New York City as a senior editor at Beacon Press. There, Rakia's instincts and personable working style, you got that, led her to develop book ideas from scratch alongside promising writers and to cultivate a distinctive trade-year list for the publishing house. For her innovative and daring work, she was honored by Publishers Weekly as a Star Watch honoree in 2018. Before Beacon, Rakia held editorial positions at HarperCollins, Viking, Penguin, and Kensington. She freelanced for 6 years as well. Outside of that, Rakia served as an adjunct lecturer for 3 consecutive semesters at City College of New York. Her weekly course was Introduction to Publishing. Rakia tutored writing, English, and SAT prep for 3 years at Upward Bound, an after-school program for teens. She also volunteered for 2 years as a writing mentor with the nonprofit Girls Write Now. Rakia, proud graduate of Haverford and the Columbia Publishing course, where she was an AOL Time Warner Scholar. And you can find her on Instagram and Twitter. And finally, Gayatri Patnaik is the director of Beacon Press, a distinguished Boston-based publisher founded in 1854 by the Unitarian Universalist Association. Gayatri was born in India, where she spent her early years with her grandmother in New Delhi. At age 7, she joined her mother and older brother in the United States, where her mother taught at Frostburg State University. At age 14, Gayatri returned to India to study at the Woodstock School, international boarding school, and she then attended Goshen College, majoring in English, literature, and 3 minors in French, women's studies, and teaching English to speakers of other languages. Gayatri received a fellowship from the New School for Social Research in New York, where she received her master's degree in anthropology, writing her master's thesis on girls in Bombay who were forced into prostitution and on the role of the Indian government in perpetuating the AIDS pandemic. Taking a pause from the academy, Gayatri completed an internship at Random House and then began a publishing career at Rob Weisbach Books. She then moved to Routledge, where she became full editor and acquired books in philosophy, and later with Palgrave Macmillan, where she edited both academic and trade titles and was promoted to senior editor. Gayatri joined Beacon in 2002, where she still, I believe, edits books in U.S. history on race and ethnicity, African-American studies, immigration, and LGBT plus related issues. She has worked with authors including Cornel West, Charlene Carruthers, Kate Bornstein, and bottom-up historian Marcus Rediker. Her successful series, Revisioning American History, approaches our history from the vantage point of underrepresented communities and flips the usual narrative, showing the immense complexity and truth of the past. So you'll see we've got some heavy hitters here. And this is going to be fun and I think memorable and also something to remember. Just one note before we start about pacing. If I feel, panelists, like that we're going too slow or too fast, I'll just mention it casually. I probably won't have to, but I'll let you know if for some reason we need to adjust. And we're ready to launch in to the first question. So I'll ask the question, panelists will answer it. I'm happy to repeat the question. And with this one, I think we'll start with Gayatri. Someone in the audience asked, what are things you know now that you wish you'd known when you first entered publishing?
All right. Before we start, I just want to say a big thank you to you, Tim, for imagining this, and to Rakia and Hisae for being on it with me. And like Tim, I want to thank the audience for some amazing questions. They were really thought-provoking, and I appreciated it. So there are a few things I wish I knew. I wish I had known that it would take years for me to find the right publishing fit. And I wish I would have known that that would be okay, because there's always so much to learn where you are. But I would have told my younger self to be much less anxious about it all. I also wish that I had spent more time considering other ways to be in the publishing community, as well as spending more time thinking about different departments in book publishing. I fell into editorial and it worked out for me, and I'm grateful. But I realized that I never really considered the many other ways to be in publishing, and I think I should have. And I think finally, I'd say that I didn't realize just how much I'd love the publishing community and how much I'd end up learning from authors, and also my colleagues. I think publishing is an extraordinary lifestyle, and there's a saying that some of you might know: it's not always a good living, but it's a good life, which alludes to the reality of not great salaries, but I think the great life is because I think the colleagues in this industry are exceptional. So.
Thank you. Hisae, are there things like that for you?
Yeah, I just want to echo Gayatri's thanks to you, Tim, for calling us together, and to the audience for the questions. And yeah, just to echo what Gayatri was saying, I think I wish I had known, I wish there had been more transparency around salary scales, honestly. Because, as a professional in publishing, the truth is that things are going to be different for you than for your peers who perhaps practice in other areas. Our press is based in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're surrounded by technology companies. If you're a writer and an editor with strong language and communication skills, you're going to be tempted by other industries and other professions. And we're always losing people in the book industry to those other professions. Law also comes to mind. I mean, being a place where, you can use your communication skills strongly. But yeah, now, I mean, I would advise anyone to look at like Publishers Weekly. I think there's Lee and Low. There's various salary studies that are available online, and I would advise anyone starting out in publishing to take a look. And having said that, yeah, the extraordinary life also that you can have in publishing, a good, what is it? A good living, that phrase, whatever you, whatever,
It's
whatever.
it's not always a good living, but it's a good life.
Oh,
Yeah. Hisae, you froze for a moment. Oh
I
wait,
can.
you're back.
Oh, great, great. So yeah, just the extraordinary community and the kind of people that I've had the privilege of working with have just made it all worthwhile. So that's what I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, thank you. And Rakia, how about you? Oh,
The
sorry.
question one more time, please.
Oh, yeah. What are things you know now that you wish you had known when you first entered publishing?
To relax. I was wound pretty tight. I was too young to be wound that tight. I was in a hurry. And part of that is because the salary was so low and I was eager to just be more comfortable, not even be the most comfortable, just be a little more comfortable. I think I don't know that it's any better now with inflation, but most of the assistants, and I include myself among them, had part-time jobs outside of our full-time jobs because you couldn't make a living, like even a very meager living, you couldn't make on just your one salary. But even then, I wish I had, it's fun. And I don't think that I had as much fun as I could have had because I was just really, I was in a hurry and I worried about things all the time. And then more practically speaking, I did not understand the importance of being strategic. And it took me a long time before I realized that. I, it's probably because of my upbringing, sort of relied on, I'm going to work hard and that hard work will be recognized. And that's very naive. You've got to work hard, but that can't be the only thing that you're doing. And so it took me longer than I wish it did to understand strategy in my professional life. So those are the two things that come to mind right away. I wish I had just sort of relaxed a little bit, had a little bit more fun, because those years, they go by really fast. And once they're gone, they are gone. So sort of like try to enjoy it. And then also just being more strategic about how I worked, when I needed to make a move, how I moved, how I put myself, how I made my work known. There's a time to be really loud and there's a time to not be really loud. And I didn't have the best instincts at the beginning about all those things.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for those answers. And it segues pretty well, Gayatri, if we can stick with you. The next one is, where did you find your confidence early on in your career? Did you ever struggle with how your confidence or your tone was perceived due to your race and ethnicity? And if so, how did you work through that?
You know, this was such an interesting question to think about because what I realized is the truth is I don't think I had a ton of confidence early on. It took me quite a while to find my way. And when I did find confidence, it was because I was able to connect to people who were similar to me in some way, largely BIPOC and queer and quirky colleagues. And I'm still connected to many of them and really grateful for having that kind of community. I think my real confidence actually came with the fourth job I had, which is where I am now, at Beacon, because it was a place where I could bring my full self to the job and my passion to the job in terms of the kind of publishing I wanted to do. But I think that in the beginning, I was really looking through a glass darkly. Like I enjoyed aspects of it, but I was missing something. And I'd actually decided that if Beacon didn't work out, I would leave the industry because it wasn't quite the right fit. And I'm grateful that it did. So.
Thank you. Hisae, how about you? Where did you find your confidence early on? And did you ever struggle with how your confidence or your tone was perceived due to your identity? And if so, how did you work through that?
A great question. I mean, I think I'm finding my confidence daily, actually. It's an ongoing process. I can't say that it ever stops, really. However, I think just having the support and companionship of other great editors at North Atlantic, we've always had a really wonderful team. That's the system I grew up in trade publishing. And yeah, I think in addition to being a woman of color, also just being in, having arrived in the United States at the age of 30, just the transitions. Yeah, there's definitely been times related to that where I felt sometimes that it's difficult to communicate. And as someone who's in the business of communication, that can be an extra challenge. But yeah, I really think it's something you just, yeah, in my case, I just work at it. Yeah, one step in front of the other.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And Rakia?
Would you repeat the question? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
by the time we get to me, I need the question repeated. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do that from now on. So where did you find your confidence early on? And did you ever struggle with how your confidence or your tone was perceived due to your race and ethnicity? And if that did happen, how did you work through that or with that?
Okay, so 3 questions there. So where did I gain my confidence? Growing up as a child, I'm from Atlanta. And I was surrounded by people who poured into me, every teacher, my parents, aunties, uncles, my friends, we poured into each other, the parents of my friends. So I left the nest fortified. And I had been spoon-fed the idea that I would have to work harder. That is very not in vogue these days, and I'm not a parent, so I don't know if I had a child, if I would teach them the same lesson. But I know for me, by the time it was my turn to sort of meet the world, I was bred to be confident. And so I didn't struggle with having confidence. I had enough home training and common sense to know that I didn't know anything about publishing. And so I knew I knew that there was so much I didn't know. But my confidence as a person, that was set really, really early and continued to be nurtured. And then as I, tried things and I wasn't good at it, I knew that I could get better at it. And so it didn't bother me if I wasn't good at things. I knew that if I kept at it, I would improve. And usually that's what happened. And that just sort of continues to fortify, a person's confidence even more. How does that play in my professional life? Every day, every single day, even now, all these years in, there are still moments where I can tell that someone, they might not like my confidence. They might expect me to be more deferential or not to know what I know. And that's just not it doesn't bother me. Again, because I was told everything that was going to happen. So when it happened, none of it is surprising to me. If anything, it's a sign to me. It allows me to make a mental note about that person. And now I know how to behave with this person. This is where strategy comes in. You're going to hear me talk about strategy quite a bit. I don't think there's any way to succeed in this business for the long haul without having one. And everyone's going to have a different strategy, but you've got to have one for yourself. And so, yeah, there are people who don't like, being loud or being or not waiting for someone to say okay, not waiting for someone else's yes. I said yes, so it's yes, and we're going to move like it's yes. Not everybody's going to like that, and I don't consider that to be my problem at all. Now, there are some instances, because this is a very collaborative industry, where I can anticipate that's going to be my problem. Because I want something to happen in one way and I can anticipate that the room is maybe not going to be receptive. And that's where, okay, is it worth compromising here? Am I wrong? Do I need to check myself? Let me have a private conversation with this person. Okay, maybe we need to set up a 3-person meeting so that we can all lay everybody's cards out on the table. There's a time when whatever it is that I want to happen, strategically, I can make happen. I've just got to take 4 extra steps to do it. That's probably more what I'm up against. That's probably what happens more often than not. And so where I think that confidence and race and being a woman, my job, I'm able to do my job the same as somebody else, but it takes me more steps to do it because at some point, someone doubts and I've got to make a case. I've got to prove. And that's energy and time and sometimes resources. And that gets exhausting over the course of a book's life, over the course of a list, over the course of what you're publishing for the year, over the course of a career. And it's, this is more than burnout. This is something else. But you've got to have a strategy for how you deal with it. I think there's some moments where you deal with it head on in the moment in real time. You got to figure out how to do that, but it has to be done then. You don't send an email 4 days from now after you've spoken to your family and your therapist and your pastor, and now you're coming back. Sometimes that's the thing to do. Other times you have to deal with it in that moment. You go off and you say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, I just got to double back. What was that?" And then you put someone on the spot. That's not a comfortable thing to do. But sometimes if you have enough confidence and enough expertise, that is the exact thing to do. And so, yeah, fortified from the nest, having common sense enough to understand I need to get good at this before I can be, waving my confidence willy-nilly, because otherwise you're just an idiot. And then figuring out when, now that I've got some expertise, how do I get everybody on board when they're doubting me, not because they're doubting the idea, they're doubting the idea because I'm the one who said it. That is going to happen. You're never going to have enough expertise where that doesn't happen. Gayatri's the director of her press, and that happens. Hisae is the publisher of her press, and that happens. You're never going to be old enough. You're never going to be too senior. You will think that you've graduated out of that. And then something's going to happen, and you're going to be reminded that you're not. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you. This one's kind of about how you get fuel. The person asked, I'd love to know the projects, moments, or rationales that have kept you motivated in this industry where perhaps there wasn't a route open for you to begin with. Like, how did you get over those humps? Was there a book? Was there a relationship? Was there a challenge? If you could just recall one or share one, that would be helpful. Gayatri?
Yeah, so, my motivation was to publish books that resonated for me and reflected my beliefs and passion. And I wanted to publish books by BIPOC, queer, and immigrant writers. And so I think, Tim, you alluded to this, a project I started at Beacon years ago, which definitely kept me motivated, is a series called Revisioning U.S. History, which tells U.S. history from the vantage point of diverse and underrepresented perspectives. So we have books that center U.S. history from queer, Black, Indigenous, etc. perspectives. In fact, I have one displayed right here, a Black women's history of the United States. So, because these books, tell the truth about our complex history and the fact they've found a good-sized audience, all of this has been so motivating and exciting to me. And then to see the reception that these books have gotten and that they're kind of selling across the board is just, well, it's everything. It's why I got into this, and it's why this press ended up being the right fit for me. So that's the example I would give.
Wonderful. Hisae, how about you? Were there just some projects or moments or relationships that were pivotal at key points?
Yeah, I would say content is so important. I think when you feel that you're in the service of publishing voices, messages, wisdom that are very important to be heard. Yeah, not to sound too woo-woo. Of course, we're not scared of being woo-woo in our particular lines of work. When you feel there's a kind of energy supporting you and flowing through your work, then it's really not so personal anymore, actually. And you can find, yeah, even at times when you just feel like you've hit a wall, there's there's just times when you just feel there's things that have to be done and you're there to do them, and it's not about you so much. So yeah, those times have been buoying or sustaining. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And Rakia, were there any projects, moments, or rationales that kept you motivated where perhaps there wasn't a route open for you to begin with?
Two. So I remember sitting in my first editorial meeting. This was very, very early on, probably within the first weeks on the job, and watching the other, it's different at many publishers now, but back in my day, all of the editors and senior people sat at a table, an oval-shaped table, and you had to be editor. In the editorial department, you had to make editor to sit at the table. And so the assistants, we all sat at a series of chairs, sort of watching. And I wanted to sit at that damn table so badly. I didn't know what to do at the table, but I saw them sitting there and I thought, how do I get to sit at the table? And then one by one, they each went around and talked about the projects they had and what they were considering and the things that had a lot of that were very viable and they were going to pursue. And then some editors had things that they had already pursued and lost in auctions. And then other editors were saying this came in and other people are really hot for it, but I'm not so much. Hearing the way that these editors were talking about the submissions and then hearing other people from subrights and publicity and marketing, the publishing office, them weighing in, watching like the beginning of the sausage making, I found this thrilling. I just was so excited. I don't think I had read one submission yet, but I thought, these are my people, and I don't know how to do this, but I'm smart enough to do this. This is where the confidence comes back in. I don't know how to do it. I know enough not to say anything right now, but I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to watch. And week after week after week after week, I'm going to watch how an editor who loves something pitches it and sells the whole room on it on the pitch. I'm going to watch an editor love something, pitch it, but they pitch it poorly. What happens then? And just sort of the sausage making aspect of it, I found really intoxicating. So that was the first thing. And then the next thing, when I hit a sort of a mini ceiling, I was an assistant and I had been promoted once, but I was really wanting to be promoted again. And I was watching people who got hired after me promoted, and I was still waiting to be promoted. I thought, I've had enough of this. I'm going to business school because I was so poor and I was so frustrated and I was like angry. I was the only Black person in the editorial department, certainly at my imprint, absolutely on my floor. And I think this was at Penguin before it combined with Penguin Random House. I think I was one of 2 Black editors in editorial in the entire company. I mean just in the editorial department in any capacity. And I think there was just a lot of unconscious bias happening there. And I just became very, very, very discouraged. And so I decided I was going to go to business school because I wanted to make some money. And I was like, to hell with this place. And then I went to a couple of open houses for business school programs. And I thought I'm going to apply to the top 20 and whoever takes me and gives me money to go, because of course I would need a scholarship. That's where I would go. I got my admission, the application. And the first question was, why do you want to go to business school? And I was like, because I'm not getting promoted in my publishing job. And I was like, okay, business school isn't for me because I still want to do this. But it took me weeks and weeks and weeks of going through the motions of going to these open houses for business school, getting the applications. I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal, which I'd never done before. I was really sort of wrapping my head around doing it. And then the very first question, I knew the answer was, I don't want to do this. I just want to get promoted at work. And that didn't mean leave publishing. That meant I needed another publishing job, which I was able to finally secure after some time. Yeah, those are the things that stuck. Something will happen. It'll either be a book that you want to publish, or you're watching someone else's work that you are inspired by, or you're watching someone's work that you're not inspired by, and you're like, I would do this so much better. Like, you can take your inspiration from wherever you get it.
Hear that. Beautiful. This one's a little more specific, less about you all and more about publishing. It's an unfortunate equation that those voices that most need to be heard are also the ones that often have the least marketplace attention. And publishers then rely on authors' platforms for sales. How do we be right by those voices that need to be heard in tandem with the need for sales being driven by only known names for the most part? So here we are with the voices that most need to be heard, kind of publishers and readers, so they say, aren't giving it marketplace attention. So then we have this situation where unless this author of color has a huge platform, they're not going to do the book. So how do we honor these voices and at the same time navigate this reality of the marketplace? What do you say, Gayatri?
One thing I would say is that there are different kinds of publishers out there. And I think it's quite possible that a smaller publisher or one which has a certain mission might be more willing to take a risk on an author who doesn't have a huge platform. And I also want to say that I think platforms really differ. There might be a community activist that has a platform that serves their audience, but it might look different from another kind of platform. So I do agree this is an issue, but I do want to underscore there are quite a few different kinds of publishers, and some might be more open than others. So I think that's maybe what I'll share.
Yeah. How about you, Hisae?
Yeah, I think we might be one of those small publishers you're alluding to, Gayatri. In our case, we try to balance our list. We have as a nonprofit, mission-driven nonprofit publishing house, we're not beholden to shareholders or, those kinds of motives. In publishing, we can be quite pure in a sense. So if there is an author of color that we really believe in, even if the platform is not, what industry standards might dictate to be sufficient, if we think it's worth taking that gamble, we will, and we have.
Yeah.
It's always been very rewarding.
How about for you, Rakia? What have been your perspectives on that of voices that need to be heard, but kind of the profit side of things, saying, well, you're not big enough. How do we honor those voices and kind of still have those books resonate?
I think you honor them by you either make a commitment to publishing them well yourself, or you steer them towards someone who can. There are some submissions that come in and I think, I would love to do this, but I'm not at the right house for this. This belongs someplace else. And not necessarily, sometimes it's a smaller mission-based publisher, sometimes it's a medium-sized house, sometimes it's another imprint within my house. Because every imprint has its own ecosystem. And some ecosystems are, there's room for 1 or 2 books a year, or maybe 1 or 2 books a season, that we're going to take a flyer. Like, everybody loves it. This feels important. We all agree. And we're going to put a little money here and give it an extra, give it a little love and try it. The problem is we can't do that every time. You can't do that you know, for every time you like something that you think is worthy, that doesn't mean that you can actually pursue it. And the instances where I have acquired books like that, I am very, very transparent with the author and the agent, if there is an agent, usually there is, about my publishing, what my strategy, here I go with the word strategy, what my strategy is. And that might be, I know you want this book to come out soon, but we're going to give it more time. We need more incubation time, not because not because the book isn't good as written, but because I need time. I need you to become your platform. Can we get more? Can you get another speaking gig? Can you get another, do you have something coming up that's going to help make the case, that's going to help me make the case to my sales team so that they see you differently than I think they're going to see you now, right? Yes, there's that. Who do you know? That becomes really, really important. Who are you aligned with? What do they have going on? Like, it's not enough to have a really great book, and it's not enough for me to like it. Especially at a Big Five house, you've got to sell it to your marketing team and to your publicity team and to your sales team. And even they might like it if they read it, if they spend real time on it, but they also are publishing hundreds of books every year. And so sometimes it's just getting them to take 2 hours to focus on this one thing. And that doesn't sound like a big ask, but it really, really is. And so if I've got something that I really love about an author who I think could be really served by the house, if I can do it right, then I want to be really honest with myself about whether I can do it right. And if I have the bandwidth for that, you know, it takes more touches for that kind of book to get the kind of respect and attention you want it to get in-house. The worst thing you can do is try to sort of guilt trip the house into publishing this thing, because it's very often not going to be published with care, very often not going to be published with respect. And because it's not published with care and respect, it's probably not going to do very well. And now this author's track record for their next thing is trash. And so sometimes I write a very loving rejection email. This is really, really fantastic. Here's why I'm not going to pursue it. If you don't mind me, you know, suggesting a couple of things, here are some things to consider. And then the other thing I would add is sometimes I'm not the right person for it. The size of my list, or the other books that I have on my list, or the other people that I've got on my list, I just don't have I don't have the bandwidth. But if there's an editor who's smart and hungry, and I mean like ravenous hungry, and they're looking to get their next promotion, and they've got some expertise, but they're not very senior yet, sometimes they're the perfect editor for a book at a big house, because they're looking to build a list, and they have enough expertise to bring that to the project, but they don't have so many responsibilities that's going to be a time suck for them. And if they are respected by the rest of the house, even if they're not very senior, their good work can bring other people to the table. I've seen that be very effective as well. And so you just got to be really, there's a way to publish the kind of project that the person asking this question, there's a way to publish that kind of book at a Big Five house, but you can't do it all the time. And if you're going to do it, you've got to be really clear about the institutional levers to push and pull to make it happen, and know how you're going to do it.
Thank you. We'll do one more question here, and then we'll take a quick pause. This question is really a walking the talk question. So the person asked, how can the publishing industry move beyond performative diversity efforts to create lasting systemic change that uplifts BIPOC voices, not just on the page, but also behind the scenes in decision-making roles? So how can publishing move beyond performative diversity and actually create lasting systemic changes that honors BIPOC folks on the pages, but also behind the scenes in the decision-making rooms? Gayatri, what do you think?
Well, I think in addition to being committed to hiring more BIPOC people, sustained support has to be given so that they can thrive. I think it's pretty crucial that those in leadership positions have to cede some power and create more opportunities in order to retain and again, really continue to support BIPOC staff. So, I really appreciate this question because I think that everyone has been very disappointed at the publishing industry and how we really haven't moved the needle very much in spite of the fact that everybody says they want to do this. And on one level, I believe them, but on another level, it's like, well, why is it taking so long? So that's what I would share. I'd also say, Tim, that I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, if you have any to share about this as well. Just because, you're a publishing professional and, just wanted to throw that out too.
Hmm. Wow. I thought I was just asking the questions today. Let me come back to that because
Yeah.
I want to hear that, but I appreciate you asking. And yeah, for Hisae, yeah, the question is, are there ways, whether you've seen them or whether you imagine them, that actually the change around race could be systemic, could be inside outside?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, we've all seen in the news about the rapid hiring and then, lack of support also for BIPOC publishing programs and staff hires, in the big five. And I would say in a small press context, yes, it's about hiring. Yes, it's about sustaining. Yes, it's about, I would look, if you're in a small press context, look at this, again, salary. Look at how much more is the chief executive making than the lowest level staff. At Parallax, we have like a spread. Like the top person is not going to make a certain amount more than the very newest hire, so that there's more equity immediately. Because everyone, we all we all have the same needs to eat, to pay our mortgage or our rent or whatever. And if we really want people of color or just anybody to thrive in this industry, then we have to look at this extractive model that we have. And, we're working within a society that's capitalistic by nature. Is a kind of pyramid scheme whereby the people at the top make more and the people at the bottom make less. So, I don't know about the big houses, but certainly in a small press context, I think leaders of presses that that are more human scale can really look and ask themselves, are we profiting off the labor of our younger peers? And if we can look ourselves in the mirror and say we're really doing our best to support those people who are young to publishing, and yeah, I that's what I think be done. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Rakia, just wondered with you as well. Yeah, publishing moving past performative diversity and creating change for BIPOC folks in publishing, authors, readers, that lasts, that's inside out.
I think publishing is not interested in this. I think that in the moments where publishing feels it needs to show interest in this, you see big step leaps forward, and everybody tries to eat as much as they can because that it's not going to last. I think that happens over and over and over and over again. And the conclusion that I have drawn from that is that publishing doesn't really care about this. I am beholden to shareholders. And I think that there's the work of the house, and then there's the work of the person who's working in the house. And I think that if you are able to do the work that you want to do within the confines of what the house, allows you to do, then it can work out really well for you. You're also going to have to probably accept some things that you don't want to accept, you know? I'll talk about myself, for example. On the one hand, there's what I call the capital W work that my work in publishing is about, which has nothing to do with like sales. There's certain books that I want someone to be writing. There's certain voices that I want to be heard. There's certain topics that I want people to write about, and I get to do that here. And in exchange for me getting to do that here at the level that I'm able to do it, there are also things that I also have to do that I don't want to do, or things that I have to see that I don't want to see. That's the trade-off. Not everybody's going to make that trade-off. Not everybody should make that trade-off. Some days I wake up and I think, why am I making this trade-off, right? But that's the trade-off, right? And so I say quite soberly that I don't think I think it's a plus for them if they're able to have a book that's making money or have a staff that's really profitable, and they are, people of color and they're authors of color and they're topics that mean something to them personally. But it is very, very common. I think it's more common within the big five publishers than uncommon for people who are championing these books to disagree with everything inside the pages. And people rationalize this in whatever way, allows them to sleep at night. I have to rationalize some of this myself. I'm not above this. And so I don't think that publishers are interested in this. Some advice I got from a publishing friend was, in those brief windows where you can feast, you can gobble up books and everyone's paying attention for a moment, feast. But also know that the famine is going to come. And so right now we're in a moment of famine. And so what you try to do is bring some of that strategy that I keep talking about over and over and over again, so that it doesn't sting so badly. You don't want to ruin a writer's career. You don't want to have published books, so many books so poorly that the next sort of cohort of writers that are coming in are damaged by the books that came before them. That sometimes happens. And it's not fair, but we're not talking about fair. I'm just telling you what happens. Yeah, I don't think publishing is interested in any of this. I wish I had a more optimistic answer.
No, thank you for your truth. We're gonna pause for like 3 minutes, little bio break. But please come back. When I come back, I'll say, come on, or something loud. So if you're in the other room, you can hear it. So yeah, it's where I am, it's 3:54. Let's just say 3:58. So 4 minutes just to stretch your legs. See you in a few. Hi there. Um, Hi, folks. Gayatri had asked me how many people are here in the I haven't checked for a while, but in the beginning it was like 60. And hopefully you're all are still there. I like took that tab off because it was distracting me, but I can find it if Zoom will let me. Oh, 43 right now. So we've actually held pretty well from the beginning. There's that like drop off percentage on TikTok or whatever, where like people watch the
Right.
first 2 seconds and then they're gone. We've got people still with us, which I'm grateful for. And yeah, we're right on time, I think, to go back in. And yes, this question is very direct. What kind of advice would you give a mid-level Black editor who's looking for ways to advance in their career? How do you or how did you deal with a manager or more seasoned coworkers who think they're progressive but have expressed microaggressions that make you want to scream? I'm going to switch up the order for the second half and start with Rakia, if that's okay.
Sure. This is where you need people. You need your people. And if people are making microaggressions against you, and you don't have the kind of relationship, pardon me, I'm sucking on a mint now. I hope you all can hear me okay. They're making microaggressions against you, and you do not have the kind of relationship with them where you can say, hey, what's going on here? Because sometimes you can have a relationship with someone where you can have a conversation about that. But if you don't have that kind of relationship, then you've got to find your people. And I think the mistake that I made as a young person, and not saying that the person who asked this question is making the mistake, but the question I made as a young person was having only my people be my peers. And so Thursday night beers, we'd sit at the bar, beers were like $2 back in my day, and like complain and compare notes and commiserate and like, what do I do? And that's helpful, but only to a point, because they know what I know. You need someone who knows much, much more, and not just about the business, but also about like how to be in the office, how to deal with these things. I found that, some of the older people who were my mentors but weren't in publishing, they weren't as helpful because they didn't understand publishing. So you've got to find your people. And if you don't have people who are half a generation or more advanced in their careers than you are, go get some. Because that's how you're going to deal with this. Because everybody's individual predicament is too individual for me to say, this is what you should do. But there should be somebody in your life who you can, go to and say, here's what's happening. What do you think I should do? I can tell you at least once a month, there's somebody who's 15 years younger than me walking into my office, their eyes are red, and we close the door and we talk through what's going on. And then they get through what's going on. And this is part of what is necessary for them to deal with these situations. So in lieu of giving a specific bit of advice on how to deal with like microaggressions from somebody who's more senior than you and, et cetera, you need people. You need people. And that's like the number one overarching thing that I have seen that's missing when someone is dealing with this situation and doesn't know how to deal with it. They don't have enough senior people in their inner circle. They can't only be in your outer circle. They can't only be people you go to when you need a job recommendation. They can't only be people that you go to when you're stuck. Have relationships, real relationships, professional relationships with people who are not your peers. And they don't have to be Black. That helps, but that's a professional situation. And you want people who are on your side, who are invested in you in a way that your peers are rooting for you, but they can't help you in the way that somebody who's farther along in their careers can help you.
Yes. Thank you. Hisae, the same question about, advice for what to do if someone's facing microaggressions from colleagues and perhaps particularly more senior colleagues at work.
Yeah, I don't have very much more to add to what Rakia has just shared. Yeah, thank you so much for pointing out that, just venting to your friends or to your peer circle is only going to get so far. You do need that diversity of support. If you're very lucky, you'll have someone at work to talk to who's more senior than you and who knows the whole situation more intimately than someone who's an outsider or a bit more removed from the situation. So I think one thing that small presses can suffer from is just a lack of, you can call it HR support. That sounds very officious and distant, but in smaller groups, it's often not that way. But yeah, I think, it's good to seek support in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Yeah, Gayatri, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think the person who asked this question said that this is from coworkers who think they're progressive. And, I think microaggressions are always frustrating and upsetting, but when they come from people who believe they're progressive, I think it can be really tricky to address. I actually, reached out to get some professional advice about this. And I want to share what the person said to me. I thought it was helpful. Would have been good for me to have known it as well. They said that it's really helpful to try sometimes to approach this kind of thing, both with self-awareness and professionalism. And they said that taking a moment to process one's own reaction privately can be helpful so that one doesn't respond in a purely reactive way. They said that if it feels safe and if it seems like it would be productive, it might be worth trying to address the comment directly, maybe by asking a clarifying question like, well, what did you mean by that? Because sometimes that alone can make people pause and reflect. But again, this is if one feels they can do that. If the situation feels more sensitive, there's the option of a one-on-one, kind of focusing on the impact of the comment rather than assigning intent. But they stressed that it's also really important to document. And especially as this kind of thing becomes a recurring issue, to consider using internal resources like HR or an employee resource group. And I'll end with a quote from the person who I spoke to this about, and she said, ultimately, I found that progress often comes through calm but firm conversations that invite people to reflect rather than shut down. So, for what it's worth, I thought some of that was helpful.
Absolutely. And this is in a way a related question, Rakia. The person wrote, as someone looking to start their career in this industry, who's eager to make a change for underrepresented voices, would you advise to voice that passion from the start or slowly start voicing them once you've been hired?
Be yourself. Be yourself. Be yourself. Be your fucking self. Be yourself. Whatever feels right for you. Because if you can only hold up the facade for so long, everyone's going to see through it. If you are yourself, you're going to be more comfortable. When you're comfortable, you're more at ease. When you're more at ease, you do better work. Be yourself. I would say that till the cows come home. And if what you want to say, if the work that you're doing is social mission driven, then say that. It's also you might not be the right person for that job. That company might not be right for you, but you'd rather know that at the beginning than 3 years in and you're wondering why you've not been promoted.
Right.
Sometimes a short-term loss can be the best thing that happens for you. I think it's totally smart to be yourself. whatever that is, because it's gonna repel the thing that's not right for you, and it's gonna attract the thing that is. Sometimes losing a job is okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes losing people is okay. You will find your people by being yourself. Pretending you can't keep it up.
Yeah. Yes. I remember a colleague once told me, pay attention to how the place is in the hiring process because it shows what they'll be like to work with if you get the job. How they
Right.
onboard, how they interview says everything. And I think it can be hard to remember that when you're interviewing and you're all nervous and you don't feel like you have the much power. You do have the power to not take that job, even if it's offered to you. And so I appreciate that.
One thing I'll just add really quickly, Tim, is be yourself, but be your full self, right? So you don't want to go into the interview and just talk about social justice, social justice, social justice. Like, that's part of what you're interested in. You've also got to show capacity, And so you're whatever the job is, you can do all those things with enthusiasm, with real warmth, with excitement. And also, you have a particular mission to publish a certain kind of book. So be yourself, but make sure you're showing the full breadth of what you can do and how that applies to the job. That feels like common sense to me, but I don't want anyone to mistake what I'm saying.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yeah, and Hisae, the same question to remind you, which is, for someone who's coming into publishing, who absolutely is committed to making change in underrepresented voices, should they make that super clear from the start or kind of integrate the voicing of those in once they're in the org?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who has worn a mask in different professional settings, not necessarily at North Atlantic or at Parallax, but earlier in my career, you put on the suit, you put on the outfit, you put on the mask, you act like how you think others want you to act. I would say all of that is ultimately a waste of time. And be beautiful, be yourself is like one of those mantras that our founder has. And yeah, there really isn't anyone else who's uniquely you, who brings your, interests and passions and everything to the firm. And if you're, show up as yourself and be appreciated for yourself, be fully yourself. That is absolutely the advice I would give. Don't waste your time.
Yeah. Gayatri?
I would just add that if you're hesitating in terms of bringing your passion, try to figure out why that is and if that position is the right one for you. Also, I think it can be really helpful to speak to staff at the publishing house where you're interviewing to get a sense of things. Because, if it's not the right fit, then it's not going to be worth it. But yes, I agree that you should bring your full self, but as Rakia was saying, really your full self, not only this part of it, because that's important.
Yes. One thing we do with final candidates is we provide them with a few contacts of people at our organization who have not been part of the hiring process and say, if you want, they welcome an email from you confidentially to answer any questions you have. And I believe, people don't tell me because it's confidential, but I do believe that people looking for the jobs do reach out as I would. It's almost like, I kind of felt this. Was I right? That's important. Or even just what's it like to work there? I mean, people always ask that question to the interviewers, but they're biased. They want to hire you. They're going to give you a little bit of the dog and pony show. So
Tim, that's great. I'm going to think about that for Beacon because as Hisae was saying, everyone's got their, it's like your first date or something, everyone's showing up well and you don't really know. So I love being transparent and saying, this is who we are, you know, warts and all, you know, I've said some things, you know, talk to my colleagues, I'm not going to ask them about it. I think that's really healthy. And, you know, I love that.
Good. Yeah, and we always get permission from the staff member we suggest, and we pick purposely the staff members we suggest to be people who their work is similar, you know, where there's some resonance relationally, in terms of why we're recommending them. It's not like you can only talk to these two people, you know, it's whatever people seem right. Um, this next question is quite a departure and really relevant. The person asks, as a woman of color, especially as we become more tenured in our years, how do we effectively deal with ageism? It has become a reality in my life. Rakia?
So this is a tricky one for me because I have less experience with this one. I am firmly middle-aged. It feels like it. But I'm the middle age where I'm like my prime years, my prime earning years, my prime expertise years, where there's a sort of on a graph where you know the most, but you still got the energy to execute. I'm in that little window right now. And I think a lot about how much time I have in this window before the decline begins, where I know a lot, but I'm going home, you know. So I haven't had to deal with this myself. I have seen it happen with some of my mentors, some of the people who've been my people. And it's been pretty discouraging, if I'm being really honest. The people who I've seen handle it for whatever it's worth, the people I've seen who've handled it the best, had a plan for themselves, like how much time they wanted to, how much more time they wanted to spend working, what they wanted to do in that period, how they could use their power to either retire or to move to at-large titles, you know, and sort of slow down in that way. I think it becomes really tricky if, as you're getting older, more tenured, you want to keep working at the same capacity with the same amount of power. Because I already feel that there are younger people who are who want where I'm sitting right now. I feel that pretty acutely. And I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think that only goes away when I'm actually not sitting in the seat anymore. That's not a very good answer, but it's something that I have in mind for my own career, but I'm not in the thick of it just yet. So I'm gonna cede the floor to Hisae and Gayatri.
Yeah, thank you. Go for it, Hisae.
Yeah, I feel like I really am kind of in the thick of it in the sense of my age and my stage in life. You know, I really am in the sandwich generation. I have to take care of my mom, who is 88 in a foreign country, all these kind of personal, yeah, tasks that one has to do as one gets older in one's family life are weighing on me. I have to say that for my particular group, my particular organization, there's a great esteem held for elders, actually. And I'm lucky that my press is part of a larger spiritual organization which is run by monks and nuns. And the older you are, the more senior you are on your path, the more respect you're accorded, just for your sustaining your way on the path. So in that sense, I don't experience any ageism of that nature, but just yeah, I think what Rakia said about having a plan that would make the difference between going down involuntarily when you begin to not perform at the capacity that perhaps you feel you are, but perhaps you're not, and being self-aware, I think, aware of one's own needs and realizing, you know, I mean, that's different from ageism. Sorry, I'm not answering the question, really. I'm just
Sorry.
telling you about what things look like for me at this age and stage. Yeah, with ageism, I really, yeah, in greater society, I feel very lucky not to have to experience that. That is all I can say. But yeah.
Thank you. Gayatri, did you have any thoughts?
I think finding ways to use your experience, to showcase your experience so that its value is apparent is something to consider because it is valuable. I think as we age, I think it's really important to have strong intergenerational and strong relationships at work because things change and one needs to be aware of that and not just in rarefied community with your peers who are your same age. I agree with previous comments in terms of, I think you want to try to morph your experience into something else in terms of the next stage. And so giving yourself time to do that and being thoughtful about it, I think can really help. So those are a few thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. What sticks out as a favorite part of publishing for you? What moments do you feel yourself really celebrating, Rakia?
Pub day. I love pub day.
Yeah.
The day that the book is on bookshelves and I go to the bookstore and I buy a copy. I
Mm,
might have 10 books in my office, but I'm gonna go buy one off like at an indie from Barnes and Noble. I'm not gonna buy it on Amazon, but I'm gonna buy it from a physical bookstore. I find that thrilling. I also find it really fun when the first batch of books comes off the press. You know, we get in like 1 or 2 copies, and it's always nice to like feel that first that very first copy. But nothing beats pub day.
yeah, I agree. Is that a ritual? Like you do that for every book you've worked on?
I haven't always done that. I've been doing that for probably the past maybe 2 or 3 years.
That's great.
Fun.
Hisae, how about for you? Favorite, things that really you find still bring you joy in this work?
Getting together with my colleagues in person is very, very joyful because we're now a 100% remote workplace. And yeah, just that's wonderful. Of course, pub day in terms of the books. I love the idea of going out and buying a copy as a ritual. I think I'm going to adopt that, Ricky. Fantastic. Yeah. Um, yeah, there's so many celebratory moments, aren't there, in publishing, in the whole like the flow of the work and yeah, obviously getting great reviews.
Mhm.
Yeah, love that.
I know I'm sometimes so moved at just seeing some amazing accolades or opportunity that an author gets after the book comes out, and just seeing the way the book has mattered, that I feel like lingers with me for a long time. How about you, Gayatri?
No, one of the things I really love is being at a conference and seeing people pick up our books. A few times now, I've seen somebody pick up one of our titles, look at it, kind of smile, and I promise you, they stand a little bit straighter. It's subtle, but I see it, and I always want to go, yeah. I mean, because it's like we love this, we have a passion, and then you see somebody doing what you hoped would happen, and you're watching it, and nothing has been said. And I really love that. It makes me so happy.
Mm. Yeah, it's like seeing your book in the wild. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. Well, this next one's kind of the flip, but there's also an ask around self-care here. So the question is, what keeps you up at night about your job or about publishing? And what forms of self-care have you found effective given that?
What keeps me up at night are not meeting the expectations that I have set for myself and the book.
Mm,
I talk a lot about capacity, and every book, every author, sometimes the goals are different. Sometimes it's a sales goal, sometimes it's accolades, sometimes it's just getting the thing out there. Whatever my ambition for the book is well set, into the process. And if I sense that I'm having trouble or I'm having anxiety around actually making the thing that I want to happen, that's something that I know that I struggle with. How do I overcome it? I will let you know when I find a way to do that.
Definitely email us about that. Oh my God. Hisae, how about for you? Some of the things that keep you up and what helps?
Right. I think in terms of like trying to make a book, make it, you know what I mean? Like when you feel things are not going the way you want it, it's stressful. And I just have to let go. I have to understand that there's so many causes and conditions that I can't control. And the book is like it's on its own path. It's like a person, the author is on their own path, and you can only assist, you can only, help midwife the birth of a book. And ultimately, like there's so many unknown circumstances that can lead to a book's success or failure. And also, yeah, you can't really, of course, we delight in a book's success and take that personally. But we also have to like let go of yeah, I mean, just, yeah, it's difficult. And then in terms of what keeps me up at night around publishing, actually, it's much larger kind of macro things like just to do with the collapse of civilization as we know it and so on. All of that stuff does tend to worry me with the decline of reading in younger folks and reading books, I mean, in particular. So yeah, but it's a very interesting time to be alive. It's a very, very alive
That's for
time.
sure.
Yeah, a lot of change, a lot of transformation happening. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And Gayatri?
Yeah, all of us here publish, I think, really great and important books. And, when the books we publish at Beacon don't find the kind of large readership that they deserve, it's so frustrating. It does keep me up at night. And maybe the only silver lining is that it keeps me thinking about how to be creative and what else we might do. But, it's hard. We are in a tough industry, frankly. Uh, and in terms of self-care, yoga and swimming and frequent cuddles with my dog are really beneficial.
Yes. Cheers to that. Um, what is something on your own work's back burner that you wish you could give more time and attention to, Rakia?
I clearly did not read the questions beforehand. Um, what is on my own work's back burner? Nothing.
Mm,
And that's part of the problem. That's what's keeping me up at night.
mm,
There's a lot of stuff on the personal back burner, but professionally, I'm pretty balls to the wall, pardon the expression.
hmm.
Um, I'm still in the leave no stone unturned phase. If there's something to do, if there's something to try, I'm in the middle of doing it.
Yeah.
Can't think of anything that I want to be doing that I'm not in the middle of doing, or I've tried and decided,
Yeah.
I'm okay without it.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of any. I honestly, I'm doing it all.
Hmm. I'm having visions of a chef with many pots boiling and burners going. So it's like back burner. There's two
Yeah,
burners. Yeah.
I liken myself to like a conductor. I'm conducting an orchestra, and it's just, I've got the baton and everyone's going, and like the music just never stops.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I can't not I honestly can't think of anything personal. I mean, professionally that's on the back burner.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Hisae, any in your kitchen?
Yeah, same. I mean, it does feel like you're in the kitchen with all the pots burning, and I think that's part of the thrill of the work. It is every day is different, every book is different, every project is different. Yeah, I guess it's not really backburnered because it's something I really have to do, but I wish I had a little more time to spend to read, actually, just to read. Yeah.
Yeah. A book of ours came out recently and I got it and read it like I didn't know about it. And it was so powerful to do that, and
Mm.
to just really be able to have that feeling of space that happens in me when I really read a book that is hard to come by, and so important. How about you, Gayatri? Anything? It could be your job or it could be Beacon, where there's definitely something you want to see evolve, and you're just waiting for the right moment or the right time where you can work on it.
Well, one thing I've been thinking a lot about, Beacon is a mission publisher, and I'm really interested in Beacon trying different kinds of books than we've ever done. So I'm not going to say much more, but I'm giving it a lot of thought because, I like to be expansive. And I just going to be talking about that with some folks and really excited about that conversation. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to front burner this kind of back burner stuff.
Ooh, okay. And thank you to the attendee who gave us that great question. And we're going to end kind of briefly on this last one, which is just simply, what keeps you in this work, Rakia?
I love it.
Mm.
There's nothing else I would want to be doing professionally. It gives me a lot of personal pleasure. It's hard in a way that feels satisfying when I get it right.
Mm.
It's hard in a way that makes me want to try again when I don't get it right.
Mm.
It feels important. It's fun. There comes a point where the training wheels are off, where you know enough to really be able to flex your muscles, to be able to go. And then you find yourself in a situation where you've got some open runway. I felt this way very much when I was working at Beacon with Gayatri, where you can just play. And the difficult part about those early years is withstanding sort of the difficulties of being junior and not having the salary and the long hours and all the things that come with learning something new. But if you do, when you get to that point where you've got some open road and you can really begin to play, it really can feel like play and it can feel joyful. And if you're working with people who are smart and hardworking, and more than likely you will be, not everybody will be smart and hardworking, but enough of them will be, you can be having the time of your life and getting paid for it. And that's what happened for me. And it took a while for that to happen, but I knew it would because I saw it happening for the other people around me. People who I wasn't having the time of my life at 23, but the people who were sitting at that table in that first editorial meeting, I saw that they were. And I just thought if I stick around, maybe, and that happened. I love it.
Thank you. And Hisae, how about for you? What keeps you in this work?
Yeah, it is a sense of love. It is a sense of community. Yeah, just all of that. It is a very satisfying profession. And yeah, I think I mean, I think in any young people going out into the arts in general, not just publishing and writing, but just yeah, if you can do anything else, do that. That would really be my advice. But I think you'll know that it's for you. It's like what Rakia was saying about going to business school or something. You'll try other things and they just won't feel right. And then you'll know you are a book nerd for life. And that is it.
Yes. May us all unite, us book nerds. Gayatri, maybe, you could just you'll kind of finish us off here. No pressure, but like, yeah, we're coming to a natural closure, just such a powerful conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm again so grateful to the people here who thought about these questions and sent them to us. Because we knew once we saw these questions, like, whoa, this is going to go really well. Like, we'd really have to blow it for this to not go well because the foundation of this has been these thoughtful questions. So yeah, Gayatri, what keeps you in it?
I think it's that books really do change people's lives. And working in books with authors and my wonderful colleagues has changed my life. And I cannot imagine doing anything else. I mean, this conversation we're happening now, is wonderful. So I just feel like so grateful, so grateful. I don't know what I would have done if this last job at Beacon hadn't worked out, truly. So, it's given me everything and more.
Mm,
So
mm. Thank you so much. And thank you to you three just for, your candor, your grit. And to the people who joined us today, who hung on to the very end. Thank you for spending an hour and a half of the day with us to reflect. And what I'm hoping for is that this constellation, even though we didn't properly meet each other, that we are going to take from this some seeds that we're going to plant, and that we'll see you all in the forest. So I hope the rest of your night or day or morning goes really wonderfully, and hopefully we'll do this again and see you again. Much gratitude.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks for
Bye.
having us.